Welcome to Mom Boss Chronicles, the show that celebrates the incredible journey of mom bosses who are conquering the world of business and motherhood. We are your hosts, Jen,
Danielle, and Sue.
Make sure to like and subscribe and share with your mom friends today.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mom Boss Chronicles. Today we have a special guest zooming in from Tampa, Florida, Dr. Norrine Russell. Thank you so much for coming in, or coming virtually in. So Dr. Norrine Russell, she has her PhD in psychology. She works working with neurodiverse children. So we're going to let her elaborate on that. I don't want to make a mistake here. So, do you want to tell us how you got into this field?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talking with you all this morning. I'm a huge fan of what you do and a huge fan of moms as bosses.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done three things in my career. I was an academic for several years right after graduate school. Then I worked in nonprofit for several years. And then I had a baby. And some of your listeners might relate to this. Having a baby kind of required some reevaluation of my life. So I retired from nonprofit work and had a lot of encouragement from my community to start working with kids, mentoring them, providing kind of life coaching. And I was just a huge skeptic. I mean, this was 16 years ago, and I had no idea, what people were talking about. But come to find out, there was a huge need for that. And part of the story actually involves my own kids, both of whom are neurodiverse, and just sort of being on that mom journey of trying to find the right resources and realizing how hard it was to find resources when you have kids who are neurologically complex. And so 16 years later, here we are, and I am the practice owner of Russell Coaching for Students, and we work with neurologically complex students who have ADHD, autism, anxiety, learning differences, helping them to build academic and life skills. So basically just helping them be successful at school and in life with time management, prioritization, starting the hard things, finishing the hard things, sort of all of the life skills that we need that, are so vitally important in addition to just some general intelligence.
That's great. That sounds so amazing. So especially because you are incorporating, you said, children with anxiety. And that, I think, is pretty special, right? Because
they get overlooked.
Right. 100%. I mean, you say, autism, ADHD, I feel like there are definitely more services and it's more like of a mainstream sort of diagnosis nowadays. Yep. Whereas the anxiety probably gets looked over.
Well, yeah, I would say probably, right? And then it's become so much more prominent, right? And a lot of children these days, whether it be social media, pressures of school and everything, that's incredible. I actually was really curious. So obviously you're coaching the students, but is part of the coaching also to help the parents too? Like, are you coaching parents as well? Because I'm sure, their first time going through everything, they're probably like, what do we do? How do we approach this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that's actually part of what we do that I love so much is when parents find us and they, they might say something like, you're the missing link, you're the piece we've been looking for, maybe their child has been in therapy, maybe their child is on the right medication, but they're still struggling in school. And so, we do. We absolutely work with the parents. And generally speaking, I think the younger the child, the more actual parent coaching we do. But honestly, there's an intensive amount of parent support for our students who are in high school or college, because we all kind of live in this world now where regardless of whether or not you buy into the pressure to attend the right college or go to a selective university, I think we all feel that pressure. And so it's hard for parents. We are in, kind of a time period of really intensive parenting. That's kind of the dominant philosophy. And so we provide a lot of parent support because those parents tend to also have feelings of anxiety. Sometimes they have feelings of, I haven't done this right. I spoke to a mom yesterday who said, I just am in this horrible cycle of blaming myself and feeling like a bad parent. And I was like, no, you absolutely did everything you could at the time. And you're continuing to parent and seek out what your son needs. And so we're just going to kind of reframe that a little bit. You're doing the right things. It's hard and it's going to be okay.
I mean, she's seeking help. That in itself shows what a good parent, for sure. And for school, for the schools that these children are in, are you finding that they're helpful too, and they're kind of helping to facilitate that relationship, or is anyone kind of push back? Well, you have to use our study team or something like that.
Wow. I think schools are just in such a tough position these days. I have so much respect and admiration for the people I know who are working, in education districts. That being said, I think there are so many ways in which I hope the education system will experience huge amounts of reform to better serve students with special needs, mental health issues. There are just so many needs out there and not enough professionals and not enough budgeting. So I think
it's terrible.
We work with students, across the country, and we work with a lot of different schools. And I think schools are always very open to our services. And I do a lot of in-school training and professional development. And I think many times schools are relieved when we're involved, but I wish that didn't have to be the case. I wish that students could get their needs met at school, but there are sometimes kids who just have pretty significant additional needs that need one-on-one support. And that's where we come in. Honestly, I think anyone who is sticking it out in the education field is to be commended. And if it was in my power to be given a huge bonus and really revolutionize the way we do education. And I think there are some signs that that's going to start happening. But in the meantime, there are a lot of kids out there who are struggling, whether it's ADHD, whether it's anxiety, whether it's autism. School isn't always a place they feel they fit in or comfortable at.
Absolutely.
Even for a child who doesn't have, any of these outlying conditions, it's so difficult these days.
It's hard to be.
It's very much a one size fits all formula that they're following, and there's so many obviously shades that we come in, and
so true.
I wish they would cater more to the children and what they need.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, as a mom, so I have an 8-year-old, and he was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and before the diagnosis, I remember just feeling so upset and hurt by his actions, or sorry, it's just. Because I guess before you know what's wrong with your kid, you wonder if it's you.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't want him to be labeled,
Right.
I was like the bad kid. So, thank you. But I feel also relief in getting that diagnosis. Because now that I know, okay, he just thinks differently. He's going to have impulse issues. Maybe I can reframe the way I interact with him, and I hope it reframes the way other people see him. I don't want them to see him.
And you can get him the help he needs now, and that will change things.
Sorry.
Don't apologize. This is the
reality of life.
This is the real shit, and it's you're not ignoring it. You didn't ignore it.
Yeah.
You got the diagnosis, and now you can get him the help he needs, and that's the best thing you can do as his mother.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with him. This is real life. So.
And I have to say, after the diagnosis, his teachers and his school has been supportive, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. And does he have an IEP now?
He does. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably
so helpful about that too. But it's to get to that point as a parent. There's so much anxiety around it, and you wonder, is it me? Is it my kid? So that's amazing that you exist and your services exist because parents need it.
They do. And, I want to say, first of all, thank you for being so real and authentic about your feelings about it, because these are often difficult diagnoses to receive. They just are. And it's hard to have a child who is wired differently in some way. You know, that's a huge reason I just started my own podcast, was to provide more support for parents who have kids with ADHD or anxiety or autism. And so your honesty and your authenticity, this is what all of us as moms feel. And I think being real about that during your podcast is just so affirming for other moms who are struggling with, do I do an evaluation? Is it me? Is it him? Is something wrong? And the more we can have those conversations and the more we can learn how to talk about it. Like, your brain's wired differently. Your brain is going to have a hard time, you know, putting the brakes on at the right moment. But that has nothing to do with your character or your values or your goodness as a human being, certainly not with your worth as a human being. And so the more we have,
I love that. Yeah.
I mean, those are the words we use all the time with our students, and they're the words I use with my kids. Your brain is just wired the way it is. It's good at these things and it's not so good at these things. And quite honestly, that's true for every human being.
For everyone, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But just, I think it's so important to be honest and upfront, you know, and to say, you know, this is ADHD and this is kind of what it does. Because what I find is that if you don't have that real conversation, people and your child knows anyway, right? Like, there was probably a lot going on before the diagnosis where you were like, why can't you get your shoes on for school? Your homework. Why are you talking so much? You know,
yes,
whatever.
a lot of phone calls. Yes. Yeah.
And so now we can just say, this is the neurology of his brain. And, you know, we can let go of the blame and the shame that sometimes accompanies that there's no reason for. There's no reason to feel any shame about any mental health diagnosis.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah. I think I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe there's that aspect, like you're saying, of shame because it could be an outward action as opposed to maybe anxiety or, well, that would cause actions too, but, you know, something
like
that might, a label.
Yes,
exactly.
yeah.
And
because I feel like when we were growing up, that was such a negative label in a way, all of it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Well, anyone who was different than normal
Yeah.
for us, and I think our generation was, you know, not kind.
No.
You know, we were not kind. It was also overlooked, or it was just like,
I think that that's a great thing about this generation of kids. I think there's so much more space for being who you are. You know? I remember growing up and I was such an introverted child, but I felt like I had to be social and extroverted. And I remember trying to pump myself up every day before high school, say hi to people, make eye contact, you know, be peppier. And my daughter, who is like my mini me, is like, I'm an introvert and I need my me time. So I'll see you tomorrow.
I love that.
I love that you feel good about who you are.
You can be who you are.
Yeah. You know, and so one thing I want to say to you, you know, is that I think with ADHD, we get even more caught up in the blame and shame because we talk about these things like they're behaviors. His behavior isn't good. Well, you know what those are? And I hope this will be revolutionary for you. Those are symptoms of his neurodevelopmental disorder. They're not behaviors, right? Behaviors this morning, I chose to sleep in a little bit late. I chose to wear this outfit that I thought was kind of cute, right? I chose to not blow dry my hair. Those are behaviors, right? But when your son is struggling, those are symptoms. They're not behaviors. And if we could all just nationally make that leap to stop talking about behaviors, because I think that's part of what leads us to feel shame and embarrassment as moms. Like, your kid isn't behaving well today, as opposed to your kid is having a lot of symptoms today.
Right.
I love that.
I like that.
Yeah,
That's
I like that too.
Tremendous.
Because the behavior makes it sound like somebody's doing something wrong, whether it's the parent, the child, it's somebody's to blame for that. Whereas a symptom is like, oh, that's treatable. Thank you for letting me know these symptoms are happening. let me now work on fixing this symptom.
Right.
Or helping adjust with these symptoms.
Yeah. So I do have an interesting question. You've said you've been doing this for 16 years. Have you seen sort of like a spike in diagnosis where, I don't know, maybe it's from like the food we're eating or, you know, our environment, or maybe even parents are more in tune with it. So they're getting the diagnosis, whereas maybe they weren't. So just curious if you're seeing that happen.
The research definitely supports that there are higher prevalence rates being reported. So whereas with ADHD, maybe it was 3% 20 years ago, now it seems a little bit more like 7 or 8%. And those estimates still vary greatly across research studies. But to your point, you know, we don't know, is the actual incidence increasing, or are we doing a better job identifying and less shame and embarrassment at going for an evaluation, you know? So I don't know. I'm not a research scientist in that area, but I would say that, you know, getting identified and getting a diagnosis is so much different from having a label that isn't a diagnosis, right? Like, oh, that's the kid who doesn't pay attention. That's the kid who doesn't try hard. That's the girl who's always crying. That's the kid who's just kind of a weirdo, you know?
Yeah.
Friends. Oh, no. Mason has autism and he struggles with this because he has autism.
Right.
And so I don't know why, but yes, all of those things are being reported in greater numbers. Anxiety, autism, and ADHD. So if we're doing a better job identifying it, great. If something about our culture or our environment is creating more cases, not so great at all.
Right.
The awareness, I think, is personally and selfishly, I don't know about selfishly, but, you know, it made me think more awareness about what people are dealing with, whether it be autism and ADHD. And, you know, like, you know, the boy at the who's checking you out at ShopRite doesn't say hello back to you. You know, in your brain, you're like, oh, rude. So rude, you know, but like now, because we're more aware of what people are going through, I think to myself, like, maybe he is autistic. Maybe he's on the spectrum. He doesn't owe, like, no one owes you that back. I mean, of course, it is nice, you know, but it makes me be a little bit more thoughtful about other people, right? And what their situation is and their background, and not necessarily to like jump to a conclusion
and be offended.
Right. Yeah.
That is a really good point.
The more we have grace in those situations for those children, for their parents, and I'm just going to say, and for their moms, because it does say it's still moms who are doing more of, you know, kind of the heavy lifting with this stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like a mom's intuition. I feel like moms are very good at like being in tune with their kids. And I think you're right. The moms are the ones who maybe seek more of that help or
for sure.
Push for it.
Yeah,
definitely.
The more we understand, the more we can have grace, right? Like instead of being like, oh my gosh, that 4-year-old is running around like a crazy animal in Target. Okay. Right? Oh my gosh, look at that mom carrying the kid out of, you know, Disney World because they are having a meltdown. Like, what's wrong with their parenting? It's like, oh, I don't know what's going on there. And that looks like a hard situation for the child and the family.
That's so true.
Absolutely.
So you, correct me if I'm wrong, you wrote a book. Tell me about your book.
Oh, I did. I wrote a book because there are so many ways in which ADHD is different. I'm just going to grab. Am I going to grab? No, because I don't have one handy right here on my desk. There are so many ways in which being the parent of a kid with ADHD is different from other diagnoses, right? So let me just very quickly walk your listeners through.
Yeah.
Your kid gets an injury on the sports field, right? They go to the emergency room. They take an x-ray. The radiologist reads the x-ray, right? The orthopedist, you get sent to the orthopedist. They determine, do you need a brace? Do you need a cast? How many weeks? Then they send you to the physical therapist who determines what you need to do next. The tough thing about ADHD is that no one tells you what to ask, but everyone puts you in charge. You're the one who has to say, I think we need an evaluation, right? Schools don't often say that. Sometimes they do, but they don't often, especially public schools whose hands are a little more tied, right? The pediatrician may or may not see your child enough to recognize it. And then once you get an evaluation, generally what you get is a few pages of recommendations. And so then you still have to decide what to do. And then you're in the IEP meeting, and it's great. They want the parent to have a say so, but they're still asking you, and it's really hard. Like, I don't know about any of you, but when I got my babies, they did not hand me a mental health manual. No. I did not become an ADHD expert, even though I have two kids with ADHD. I have two kids with ADHD, autism, and anxiety. I was a little bit of an expert on anxiety before this on a personal level, not on a professional level.
Same.
Yeah, right. So the book is designed to tell parents what questions to ask. It's called Asking the Right Questions About ADHD before, during, and after the diagnosis. And what I wanted to do was not write a comprehensive book about ADHD, but say to parents, you are your kid's advocate. You're the one who's going to say, hey, school, what's going on? Do we have good symptom control? Are there other services that we need? What accommodations do we need? You're the one who's probably going to say to other family members, hey, I want to really kind of bring you up to speed on what we know about ADHD and the way the ADHD brain works, right? You might be the one interacting with neighbors or, any kind of church or religious group that you attend. And I just think it was really hard for me to know what I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing with starting your business. You don't know what you don't know when you start a business. And so the book is Asking the Right Questions About ADHD, and it's really just designed to be a handbook. Okay, I'm not sure. My kid seems like maybe they have some signs. People are kind of hinting at me like, wow, she's really active. On before the diagnosis. Oh.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
I need a copy.
Yeah. And we've gotten good reviews of it.
That's awesome. Can people buy it online?
Yep. They can find it on Amazon, and it is available both Kindle and the old-fashioned paper book.
Love that.
I love a book.
I love that. And I appreciate that you put that together because you're absolute. People don't know what they don't know. And oftentimes they don't have the resources or the guidance, or maybe they're even a little afraid to ask a fellow mom or dad, like, hey, your kids went through this. What, so having that available, to people is incredible.
Right. And then you're jumping through all these hoops because it's mental health and it's not a broken bone where they're going to send you for what you need and you're going to get it done in
and it's not a
day, 2 days.
And I'm sure approaching ADHD, anxiety, autism, it's not a one size fit all, right? Like each diagnosis and each person, each child, it's all different.
It is. It's very individualized. And that's why I started the podcast, which I've just done, is it's so complex. And, yes, there are parents who have kids who just have ADHD or just have anxiety or just have autism. Any one of those things, there's no just in there. It's a lot, the one diagnosis, but then you combine 2 or 3 of those things and it's even harder. And so, having been through that as a mom, I want to provide support to other parents and to other moms who might just feel so alone. And because I do have anxiety, I doubted myself. I really didn't have a lot of confidence as a parent. I felt alone. And, to the extent that we can help other parents with that, I love that. I love when at the end of the semester, parents write and they say, we couldn't have made it through the semester without you. Both Gracie and myself are so thankful to you. And that just feels good that there's a mom out there who feels less alone.
Yeah, for sure.
It takes a village.
That's very true. So I know you're based in Florida, but your business is you're both domestic and international, right?
Yeah. Really exciting. Really exciting from a business point of view. So I made the decision to expand nationally several years ago and just kind of did it, because I'd had a lot of those heartfelt requests from moms here in Tampa, like, oh, my sister-in-law could use your services for her daughter, or, my college roommate could use your services for her son. can you recommend something? And after a while of hearing that, I was like, you know what? We can do this. And so we went national and we went virtual at the same time before the pandemic. And it's just been really rewarding. Yeah. So we have Russell Coaching has 22 coaches, and we focus on executive functioning skills. We focus on academic and study skills, and we focus on social and emotional skills. And so it's been really fun. It's fun to get a call from Dubai. It's fun to get a call from Panama. It's fun to get a call from Canada and have a parent say, I heard you on a podcast and I think you're what we need, and say, okay, tell me about your.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is.
I love that.
To spread the awareness.
Oh, for sure. But it also, from a business perspective, I love like when people put their mind and start doing something with their heart because they feel so passionate about it. It's beautiful to see how it really blossoms, so much so that you're getting international clients,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
I bet COVID must have helped propel that a little bit, right? And the sort of the silver lining, now Zoom for therapies are more normalized. So I think that's great.
Yeah. No, it's been a really easy transition. For probably 9 or 10 years, it was just me in person at my office. And now, we see about 150 students a week virtually, and I love it. I hope that anybody who needs our services eventually will be able to find us. That's the biggest challenge from a business perspective, is people don't know that services like this exist. Like, if you're going to a wedding or a social event, you need a dress, right? You have your favorite places to go dress shopping. You go do that. If you have a kid who's complex or has a neurodevelopmental disorder, you don't always know that there is academic coaching or parent coaching out there. So that's my biggest challenge as a business owner, is how do you get the word out to people who need your services? And I'm not saying that from a profit-driven bottom line perspective, but I'm saying it because we really are mission-driven. We try to keep the costs of our coaching reasonable, and right now I'm really struggling with that because all around me I see expenses and I want to be able to pay the coach early. But I want to reach everybody who is out there feeling lonely, who has a kid that they're like, am I the only one who has a kid like this? Why are we still struggling? He's taking medication. We've been in therapy. Why can't, he passes classes? Why can't, I stop getting calls from school? So I think I still have some growth ahead of me with the business.
Oh, yeah, right.
I think it's awesome to know that you could reach out to somebody who's not just within your county or zone, because like as a mom, I feel like the only services I have are services I could drive to, but to know that I can call and have a service that I don't have to drive to, but you're available is amazing. Yeah.
We're available. We want to help.
That's great. That'd be nice if you can like team up with pediatricians to, sort of get the word out, or, different therapists. That would be great.
Yeah.
Right?
Did you mention executive coaching too?
Executive functioning coaching.
Oh, okay. What does that mean?
Yeah. Great question. So this is just like the fancy jargon word we use for life skills, time management, organizing, impulse control, sustaining attention. And so it's all the things that we need to be successful either in school when we're younger or in life, in addition to our intellectual potential, right? Like you can be as smart as you want, but if you can't organize your books or remember your homework,
right,
doesn't matter. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. And so now those things are referred to as executive functioning skills. Like that's the executive of your brain is like doing all of those organizing, time management, prioritizing, planning stuff. And those skills are usually delayed in kids with neurodevelopmental disorders. Right. So if you have a kid with ADHD, the general rule, and this does not apply to every kid in the same way, is that they could be 3 years to up to 30% delayed. So if you, for example, have a 10-year-old, their executive functioning, sometimes their social and emotional functioning can be more like a 7-year-old. Mm-hmm. And so that can be hard because you're like, why is this child still, struggling with basic manners or impulse control and, can't remember to bring his homework home, but, all the other moms don't seem to have a problem, and so executive functioning is the word we use for that. And that's really the bulk of what we do. We've developed custom software for our coaching method, which is called connected coaching. And that was fun. And that's what we do is teach kids all of those skills so that they can harness their intelligence and these skills and be successful.
That's awesome. And I feel like the younger you can do it, the better hopefully it is to set them up for the future to thrive. Because if they go, I feel like undetected by the time they get to high school, then they probably feel like a failure. Like, I never got it together. Mm-hmm. I'm the bad student, or, I don't have friends because I can't so to identify it now and to help them thrive personally, I think is just setting them up for a really good future.
I'm so glad you brought that up. And I think it's so important for your listeners to understand that getting an evaluation is essential. The evaluation might say, yes, there's some anxiety there, or no, there's not an anxiety disorder there, but some coping skills could help. Or yes, this child does have some minor autism, but unless we know, we can't figure out what to do next, right? What to do next is based on what is the diagnosis. And so the sooner the better. Early intervention, just like they taught us when our babies were little, right? Like, didn't we hear that all through preschool? Early intervention, prevention. Well, the same is true with mental health diagnoses. Yep. It breaks my heart, absolutely breaks my heart to see kids who are in high school or college who have had years of struggle in school or years of negative feedback, who don't feel like they can be successful at school, but they just don't feel like a good person.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, because then their worth is low. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your program sounds absolutely incredible. Chatting with you and hearing about everything and the services offered, it's fascinating. I learned a lot today, very much so.
That's incredible.
I appreciate you having me on because, first of all, I love what you do. I think it's so important to be talking about how do we kind of claim our lives and how do we figure out what works for us when it comes to work and being a mom? Mm-hmm. So these conversations are so relevant still today. And then, just to be able to come on and share what we do at Russell Coaching for Students, it's been a pleasure. And all of us are touched by this in some way. So I know, one of you shared this morning, but all of us are affected by this in some way, whether it's a kid in our neighborhood, a kid at our school, a kid in our family, or our own child.
Yep.
Yeah. And I feel like having the grace, understanding it as a person, as a parent, as, a fellow student just helps everybody flourish. So
yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And you said you have a podcast, right? What's your...
I just started the podcast. I just recorded the very first podcast.
Oh, congratulations.
That's so exciting.
I'm a baby podcaster, but
I could tell you have a microphone there.
You sound good.
It sounds good.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm not quite as fancy as you all are, but maybe someday. The podcast will be on Apple Podcasts, and it is quite simply called ADHD, Autism, and Anxiety, Breaking Out of the Box.
Okay.
I like that.
Awesome. Well, we'll be sure to link that as well.
Yeah, we'll tag everything and so everyone can find you and find your coaching platform and your book. And we really appreciate you taking the time. Yeah. This has been
therapeutic.
Yeah, therapeutic, enlightening.
Thank you for the work you do. Because so many moms and children, I feel like, need this support. So thank you for doing that. And, it's amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And everyone, tune in next week for another episode.
Take care.
Bye.